So you're moving to California and you have firearms and you have some questions about what exactly you can do, what you can't do. So in this video, I'm going to break down what exactly you can bring into the state of California in regards to firearms, ammunition, magazines, things like that. I'm going to talk about how to actually transport those items into the state of California and some things you should consider. And then I'm also going to cover, okay, once you have the firearms in the state of California, once you change over your residency to being a California resident, what exactly you should do then. So if you're new to the channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and also hit the notification bell. I make a lot of videos relating to firearms laws in the state of California. I am a licensed and practicing attorney in the state of California, but this video in no way is legal advice. If you have specific questions, you should always reach out to an attorney in your local area and they can give you guidance and tell you what the best practice is. So first and foremost, what can you bring into the state of California? What firearms and what items can you bring to the state of California? So if you're not a resident of the state of California and you say you're coming from another state, you can bring handguns, shotguns, and rifles into the state of California, but there are some caveats that go along with that. So first, let's talk about rifles, and let's say you have a rifle that you legally purchased in another state, but that the state of California considers an assault weapon under their statutory language. So you may have bought a rifle in another state, but here in the state of California, you are actually not allowed to have that type of rifle because it's considered an assault weapon. And therefore, if you were to import or transport it into the state of California, you would be violating California law. So in the state of California, a rifle is considered an assault weapon if it is a semi-automatic centerfire rifle that has a detachable magazine and has any of these offending features. And so in the language in the state of California, there is a list of offending features that any one of those on your firearm makes it an assault weapon. So if your rifle has a collapsible stock or telescoping stock, if it has a pistol grip, if it has a forward pistol grip, or if it has a flash hider, it is considered an assault weapon. If it has any one of those offending features, it is considered an assault weapon, and therefore you cannot bring it into the state of California because you would be violating California law. Along these lines, there are other rifles that are considered assault weapons as well, and those are semi-automatic centerfire rifles that do not have a detachable magazine. They have a fixed magazine, but they have the capacity to take a magazine that has more than 10 rounds. So essentially, if you put a magazine in it that has more than 10 rounds, it is then considered an assault weapon. So for quick reference, I have one of my California compliant rifles right here. This is a California compliant AR-15, and this is what we considered a featureless rifle. So this falls under the first section of that assault weapons language because it does not have a folding or telescoping stock. It has a fixed stock. It does not have a pistol grip because it has this fin grip, which does not allow me to get my hand around the full pistol grip and get a full pistol grip. It has a compensator on here. It does not have a flash hider. And this is a little bit of a gray area, but essentially the way that the language reads, I have a hand stop here. This is not a forward pistol grip. I cannot get a pistol grip with this. The intent of this is a hand stop. So I would be in compliance with California law. Now that's a little bit of a gray area, but as I read the language, and you should read the language for yourself and make this determination for yourself, I believe this is a California compliant featureless rifle. Now there are other types of California compliant rifles which are considered fixed mag rifles or mag-locked rifles. I don't personally have any mag-locked rifles because I'm not a fan of mag-locked rifles. I don't find the utility in them. I prefer featureless rifles. But essentially, a mag-lock rifle would have a mechanism here that would lock the upper and lower and release the upper and lower. And also there would be a magazine lock on here. And if you had that type of configuration, then you could have a forward pistol grip, you could have a flash hider, you could have a pistol grip, and you could have a collapsible stock. So that's just some general information and a quick overview of what exactly assault weapons are in the state of California and how you can configure your rifle beforehand before you come into the state of California to be in compliance with California's laws. So next, let's look at magazines and bringing certain types of magazines in the state of California. You may have purchased what are considered standard capacity magazines outside of the state of California, and now you wonder if you can bring in these types of magazines into the state of California. So what we're talking about here are any magazine that has a capacity of taking more than 10 rounds. In the state of California, any magazine that has the capacity to accept more than 10 rounds is considered a large capacity magazine, which is a legal definition in the state of California, and therefore you are not allowed to import it and you are not technically allowed to possess it with some caveats because there were some things that happened in the state of California in regard to the Freedom Week. You may have heard of Freedom Week, but generally right now, if you are an out-of-state resident and you are coming into the state of California, you're moving to the state of California, you cannot bring in what are considered large capacity magazines. Now here I have a just standard 30 round PMag, AR-15 PMag, and this holds 30 rounds. So if you are a non-resident, you have one of these and you're moving to the state of California, you cannot bring these types of magazines in because they are considered large capacity magazines in the state of California because they can accept more than 10 rounds. Similarly, along those lines, if let's say you have a standard Glock 19 and you have a magazine that came standard with that and it has 15 rounds, this is also considered a large capacity magazine in the state of California, and therefore you are not permitted to import it into the state of California. So if you're coming into the state of California and you have any of these large capacity magazines or magazines that came standard with your firearms, you want to make sure that you are not bringing those into the state of California. And I recommend that you do not bring those into the state of California because you will be hit with some large penalties in regard to importing large capacity magazines. And the reason why I have this 15 round and this 30 round PMag is because I got these during California's Freedom Weeks. And so it allowed this period of kind of grace period where we could get these, and now our possession of these is legal because we got them during a period in the state of California where the language restricting large capacity magazines was lifted. So that's why I have those right now, but otherwise you cannot bring those into the state of California and you cannot purchase those in the state of California. For example, right now in the state of California, we can't go out and purchase these large capacity magazines. So next, let's talk about off-roster handguns. This is a major question that comes in about non-residents, someone who is a non-resident moving to the state of California, and maybe you purchased a handgun that is not on the California roster. If you're not familiar with California laws, there is a roster of permissible handguns that California residents are able to buy. Now there's a little bit of nuance to that because we can purchase through private party transfers or interfamiliar transfers off-roster handguns, but generally it's very hard for us to get our hands on those. We just can't walk into a gun store and purchase an off-roster handgun. So then that brings in the question, okay, so maybe you bought a handgun out of state that is not on the California roster. Can you bring that firearm into the state of California? And the answer is yes. If you purchase that firearm legally in another state, you can bring that handgun into the state of California even though it is off roster. So my general recommendation is if you are a non-resident, if you're outside the state of California and you're planning to move to the state of California, I would highly recommend you look at the roster of handguns in the state of California. And if there is a handgun that is not on that list that you want, probably it is best practice to go ahead and get your hands on that now while you're outside the state of California, because once you become a resident of the state of California, it is going to become very hard for you to get your hands on a off-roster handgun. For example, in the state of California, so safety check, there's no magazine in it, no ammunition in it. This is a Gen 3 Glock 19. In the state of California, we are pretty much restricted to just Gen 3 Glocks and specific types of Glocks. There are other Glocks that are not even on the roster of handguns. So in the state of California, a resident like me who's not a law enforcement or doesn't have an exemption, I can only get my hands on Gen 3 Glock 19s. I can't go get a Gen 4 or Gen 5. If you're outside the state of California and you're a non-resident and you're planning to move in, and let's say you want a Gen 5 Glock, it might be best practice for you to go ahead and buy that Gen 5 Glock now, and then come into the state of California and then register it. And we'll talk about registering your firearms with the DOJ in the state of California later. If you don't do that, what you're looking at is there's going to be a limited supply of legally purchased off-roster handguns that you can get your hands on. And also for a normal resident like me and you to get our hands on one of these off-roster handguns, it's going to be very expensive. There's a premium on CalGuns and other websites for off-roster handguns. So let's say this was a Gen 5 Glock. Maybe in another state, you could get it for maybe just $500. But in the state of California, you may pay $1,000 to get your hands on a Gen 5 Glock that is off-roster. So next, let's talk about ammunition and bringing ammunition into the state of California. So California has a new law, and there were some laws that took effect fairly recently about ammunition, about purchasing ammunition through a licensed vendor and importing ammunition into the state of California. So if you're a non-resident moving to the state of California, you cannot bring ammunition into the state of California because that is considered importation. Any importation of ammunition into the state of California has to go through a licensed vendor. That is the way the language is written. Even though you are a non-resident coming into the state of California, any imported ammunition into the state of California has to go through a licensed vendor. So what you could do is, if you really wanted, if you had a lot of ammunition, you didn't want to sell it prior to moving to the state of California, you could transfer it to an FFL, to a licensed dealer who has a license to sell ammunition. You could transfer it to that FFL dealer, but it's probably going to be at a high premium and it's going to be very expensive. But here's a good place to kind of step aside and talk about how it actually is to buy ammunition in the state of California. Right now, the way our laws are set up, we have to go through a background check to purchase ammunition in the state of California. And there are also additional fees and an eligibility check. So there's a $19 eligibility check for a first-time buyer and also a $1 recurring if you are in the system already. So there's a lot more to that, but just keep in mind, if you are going to come into the state of California and you plan on purchasing ammunition, it is a lot harder right now to buy ammunition in the state of California than it is in other states. So now that we talked generally about what you can and can't bring into the state of California, let's talk about how exactly you bring these items or how you transport these items into the state of California. So really what this is going to depend on is the mode in which you are planning on coming into the state of California and how you are planning on transporting those firearms. What I'm going to say generally real quick, the general rule for flying with firearms or bringing firearms into the state of California when you are flying using an airline, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to check that airline specific policies about how you are going to transport that firearm and bring it into the state of California. So for a quick reference, I went to law school in the state of Pennsylvania, and when I was in Pennsylvania, I purchased some firearms, I purchased some handguns, and when I was moving back to the state of California, I decided to fly. So doing that, I flew American Airlines from Pennsylvania to California, and in doing so, I had to comply with American Airlines policies, and they had specific rules about how to do that. TSA had specific rules about how doing that. What you are generally going to need, or what TSA generally requires, are specifically TSA compliant locked containers. So for example, I put one of my handguns in this specific container. It is a metal container and has a lock and key. So it flew specifically in this locked container in a TSA compliant container. Along with that, generally what's required is there's an additional fee for transporting those types of firearms. So you will want to look into that. If you are planning on flying with your firearms, check the airline's websites about how specifically you do that. So next, let's talk about, well, what if you are planning to drive into the state of California? And so when you're driving to the state of California, the best practice is to comply with California's transportation laws in regards to firearms. So if you want a comprehensive review of how to transport firearms in the state of California, I have another video up on my channel and you can check that out. And I'll put a card up here also to link you to that video. But generally, the best practice is to transport a firearm unloaded in a locked container. Now, there is some nuance with handguns, rifles, shotguns about how exactly they can be transported in the state of California. But my general advice to you is if you're coming into the state of California and you're transporting them, it is probably going to be best practice for you to have the firearms, any firearm, unloaded in a locked container if you have the capability of doing that. So with this, I think it is important to reference that a locked container is not your glove box. It is not your utility box. Sometimes it can be a trunk, but there are some additional caveats to that. I would say also don't have a magazine in any of the locked containers. This is just to avoid any confusion or any debate if you get stopped when crossing the border or anything like that. You don't want to get into a legal argument with any of these individuals. I think it's just best practice just to not even get into those debates with them, talking about like statutory language or what exactly is unloaded and if it can be in a container versus not. I think it's just best practice for you to just not even have the magazine in there. Just put it in a different container or a different location. Just don't have it in that locked container with the unloaded firearm. So next, let's talk about, okay, now you have gotten your firearms into the state of California. You've complied with all the rules about what you can bring in, and you brought them in the right way. So now you go ahead and you register as a California resident. What are the steps now? Now that you're a California resident and now you've brought these firearms from out of state into the state of California, what are you required to do? And so what you're required to do under California Penal Code sections 17000 and section 27560, there is a language that any person who moves into California with a firearm is considered a personal firearm importer. And as a personal firearm importer, under the language, after 60 days, you are required to actually register those firearms with the California DOJ. So I'll actually put a link down in the details to this actual form if you want to fill it out, or like if you need to fill it out. But if you want to look it up for yourself, it's called the New Resident Report of Firearm Ownership. And what you do is you fill this out, you put all the information for the firearms that you brought into the state of California. You have to pay a $19 fee along with that form, and it is sent to the California Department of Justice. So you may say, okay, 60 days, I didn't know about that. Maybe you're watching this video now and you moved into the state of California, you brought firearms into the state of California, but you're beyond the 60 days and you're worried about, okay, well, am I gonna get penalized if I go ahead and file this form? Am I in violation of California law? So under Penal Code 27570, and there's part A and B, what this penal code in the state of California says essentially is if you're beyond the 60 days and you go ahead and fill out this form and send it to the DOJ, they cannot penalize you for self-reporting essentially. They cannot make it criminalized because you've reported yourself. So if you're beyond the 60 days and you haven't reported yet and you want to and you're scared to report because you're afraid something's going to happen to you, nothing's going to happen to you. They cannot penalize you for self-reporting. So hopefully that gave you guys a general idea of how you can bring firearms in the state of California. If you're planning on moving into the state of California and you're planning on bringing firearms, how you can exactly go about doing that, what you can bring, what you can and can't do, how to bring it, things of that nature. This is in no way comprehensive. There's a lot of nuance to that. So make sure you do your research for yourself. If you like this video and you'd like to support the channel, the best way to do that is to join my Patreon, and I'll put a link down in the details to my Patreon page. Another way you can support the channel is using the various affiliate links also found in the details. So as always, thanks you guys for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And never forget, a nation that draws great distinction between its scholars and its warriors will have its laws run by cowards and its wars fought by fools.